We have one more very exciting presentation coming up. I think the first presentation was about core infrastructure for how you make data available in a way that can be easily consumed and used for many different purposes in a decentralized way. We talked about potentially Twitter could be built on it. Mintbase was also a good example of a core infrastructure layer for NFTs. And yeah, the last presentation is kind of a little bit layer above about how can you build applications for actually using those underlying infrastructure to allow communication specifically for communities, specifically for DAOs. And so I'm very excited about the presentation of CommonGround by Florian.
Hi everybody, super excited to be here. So my name is Florian, moved to Lisbon about a year ago, always wanted to hang out in the Gnosis office, and finally, actually I'm here and I can give a talk, so perfect. Before I jump into the presentation, I have a few questions for everybody in the room. You can just raise your hands to say yes or not raise your hand to basically say the opposite. So who of you has used Discord before in your life? All the hands go up. Okay, who of you enjoys using Discord? Very few hands going up. Okay, who of you that raised your hands find it easy to stay informed across 10 or 20 communities at the same time? Okay, no hands go up. All right, so that's essentially in one sentence what CommonGround is, right? CommonGround is attacking this specific problem that Web3 has. And it's not just Web3 that has this problem, right? The Web2 people probably don't even know that they have this problem. We're at least so advanced that we can name our problems. We couldn't solve them yet, but I think CommonGround could be a contribution. So Carolina, if you could be my slide switcher. It's a bunch of slides. So CommonGround it's a social collaboration tool for communities and decentralized organizations. And you can imagine it like if Discord would actually be cool, if it would have good user interface, and if it would actually care about Web3, about your wallets, your assets, and your general security, and maybe even mental health, right? So thank you. It's a bunch of slides. So yeah, CommonGround it's a social collaboration tool for communities and decentralized organizations. And you can imagine it like if Discord would actually be cool, if it would have good user interface, and if it would actually care about Web3, about your wallets, your assets, and your general security, and maybe even mental health, right? So thank you. It's a bunch of slides. So yeah. So why are we building it? We just believe that fundamentally the potential of Web3 today is being held back because we're using shitty Web2 tools trying to acquire 1 billion users for Web3, and it's just not working. All the big Discords are being hacked by scammers every day, and new users joining this ecosystem have a really bad experience. And so that's what we want to change. Next slide, thank you. CommonGround, that's just a sort of quick look. It's probably hard to see, so I have an invite code for all of you at the end of this presentation, so you can look at it yourself. Please, thank you. So what can it do? And now I'm just going through a bunch of sort of features that we have, and it's a bunch of clicking. Thank you so much. So. Basically, you get your personal sort of Web3 newsfeed on CommonGround. You join the communities that you want to follow up with, and then you get, well-portioned information feeds about what these communities are doing. It's easy to stay informed. You get notifications, all this stuff. Next one, yes. Every community on CommonGround has its own front page, so you say goodbye to announcement channels from Discord that nobody understands or knows how to follow, and actually you go to a structured sort of blogging system. Next one, thank you. We have real-time chats, we have forums that we're working on. Everything we can encrypt is fully end-to-end encrypted, like direct messages and voice chats. We have custom roles and permissions management that neatly ties into token gating, so you can create different micro communities within your community that are differentiated by maybe the amount of tokens they hold on their wallet, or it's a certain role that they have acquired because they showed great contributions in your DAO governance. So whatever it is that helps you to segment your community into different kinds of users that do different kinds of things in your community, that's what we're supporting natively without any bots or software for you to install. It's sort of out of the box. And we think this will help DAOs actually start to be competitive with traditional organizations, right? I think we're really lacking the tools here, most of all, to get this going. We just mentioned we have this token gating stuff built in, but we think communities will start using this also for subscriptions. So a lot of communities currently really have a lack of continuous funding. And I think by having certain areas being subscription gated, so users actually start paying monthly subscriptions or membership fees in your community, will also give you the necessary funds to pay moderators or pay people in governance and all these other things that are relevant to community building. I mentioned the blogging feature, so every user, but also every community can blog about what they are doing. It's a really beautiful sort of way to use blogging. And we, of course, have a sort of Web3 profile. And just what I sort of want to make super clear, because we had some really great talks before this one, CommonGround really wants to be the UX and accessibility layer for Web3 communities. All these amazing Web3 features are protocols like the ones we heard tonight that we integrate and make actually useful through this. So we don't build it all ourselves, quite the opposite. We build this accessibility layer for these amazing Web3 protocols. So for example, we use Gnosis chain in all the different kinds of ways. Definitely want to use Ceramic for certain kinds of things. So it's really the focus is on making this understandable to normies, right? Next slide. And then lastly, really important, and this is what we're working on right now, is governance integration. So Snapshot and other governance protocols that are currently being built, like ChokeDAO, for example, they will all be natively integrated, and you can basically have your community make votes where they also discuss and talk about proposals at the same time. And we believe this will increase governance participation dramatically for protocols and DAOs today, because right now it's like you write a Medium post about a vote on Snapshot, and then you discuss it in Discord, and then you also have a Telegram group for whales, and then you have some other situation going on, and it's like, how can your users even understand what they are supposed to do, right? So that's what we're fixing with this. Of course, that's just the start. We want to be really decentralized and user-owned. We want to be public good. Now, how do you actually build a public good in 2022? I think that still hasn't been solved, so it's really an interesting journey that we're on, to be honest. We're a DAO. We've set ourselves up as a DAO. We have a governance token also on the Gnosis chain, of course. We have actually a non-profit association in Switzerland that we're using as a legal vehicle for our DAO. It's a pretty involved and sophisticated governance. I happen to be a lawyer, so if any one of you wants to talk shop about how to set up a DAO and how to create an association in Switzerland and I don't know, all this stuff, hook me up afterwards. I'm happy to share everything we've learned. It's a handful. Yeah, and of course, I can talk more about our DAO stuff peer-to-peer. So you can continue. Yeah, the team, so actually Marta from our team, she's head of ecosystem. She's also here, so feel free to approach her. Thank you, Marta, for being here. And yeah, we have a team. Basically, maybe what's interesting to other developers here, our team is mostly Web 2 senior developers. We have very few, let's say, Web 3, super nerds, just a few. And that sort of also shows our focus. We actually focus on building a web application that is just world-class. It's just competing with Facebook, with Google, with Instagram on usability. And to make that happen, you don't need people who have been nerding out on smart contracts for 10 years. You need people that have been nerding out on how to build stuff in a browser for 10 years, right, or more. So that's the focus of our team. And we integrate cool Web3 protocols where they are useful. So that's sort of our approach. Yeah, our product roadmap, basically we're going public very soon. We have a closed alpha online since May, and I'm going to share in one of the next slides an invite code for all of you that you can use. Next slide. Monetization of this, I mean, so we're a DAO and a public good, so the whole point is that this becomes a sustainable platform that can pay for its own cost in development and staying online, but it doesn't have a profit motive. That was really important to us. We actually want to hand over the majority of governance over this platform to its users. So we've reserved a majority of all the governance tokens of this DAO, and we're giving it to users over time. So very simple. Okay, last slide. Thank you, Carolina, for switching. And thank you for listening. I would love to follow up with any one of you afterwards if you're interested in what we're doing. By scanning this code, you land right on our private alpha. If you get a weird bug or white screen when you scan this, just hit reload and then it's going to eventually load. It's alpha, I'm sorry, but it works really well once you got it going on your app. We appreciate your feedback. There are places to report bugs. And obviously, I'm here if you want to report bugs personally. That's it. Thank you very much. And maybe one last thing. We have a governance proposal up on the Gnosis chain forum. It's GIP72. We're asking for a developer grant to integrate Gnosis chain even more. So if you're active in Gnosis governance, please check out GIP72 and give us a thumbs up. Thank you.
Thank you, Florian. Any questions? Sorry. Otherwise, one question from my side. So first of all, I think it's very good to focus on DAOs first, because there I also definitely see there's, first of all, there are the communities in Web3 right now, and I think as everyone knows, like, who actually tries to participate in governance, it's hard to keep an overview of what's going on. That being said, like, what do you think is the, I mean, this question I should not ask in Web3, but how do you intend to actually have revenue in this? Like, I think even Discord was struggling, I think, in terms of revenue generation.
Yeah. So I think we want to have a mixed model. We will start very sort of traditionally as a, I would say, Web3 SaaS company, maybe what Discord would do if it would be Web3 company. But then I think our big advantage to something like Discord is that we can also have marketplace / transaction fee type business model over time as users actually start to rely on CommonGround for transactions. And we want to levy a small transaction fee there, and over time, hopefully be able to make the platform completely free, for example, so get rid of subscription fees entirely. But I think in the beginning, I think we're now in a fundraising climate where it's really hard to fundraise when you have nothing to show for in revenues, for example. So I think we're going to start with something simple in the sort of subscription sphere, and then go more into the transaction space. Yeah.
Cool, yeah, I think it makes sense.
I was wondering, you said you had like the chat built in, right? Yeah. I was just wondering, is that built on top of like DM3 or XMTP, or are you building your own chat protocol?
That is an amazing question. So the builders of DM3 were actually our first investors in CommonGround. Okay. And so we're part of the process there, specifying this also eventual proposal they will make about wallet-to-wallet messaging, and we're going to implement that as well. Yeah.
The question was if they're thinking about integrating paid media.
Paid media being the ability to pay for content?
Yeah, like sponsoring ads, promoting.
Oh, like advertisement?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. Yeah. So I think, to answer this, I want to quickly explain our identity model, which is relevant for this. So CommonGround at no point collects personal data about users, like 0. That's our goal. So when you come to CommonGround, there's no email address that you have to give or a password. It's all based on wallets. We're using DIDs, so decentralized identifiers, to allow users to prove things about themselves, like I'm a unique real person, or I'm older than 18 years old, or this is my zip code, or whatever they want to prove about themselves. They can do it based on these new standards. And what they allow us to do is that we don't learn anything about them. It's actually the users with a sort of data backpack that they are walking around with. And on CommonGround, communities can ask them to prove, hey, prove me you're a real person, because we don't want any bots in this community. And then the user shows their I'm a unique person certificate to this community, and they are in. So the future of advertisement, for me, actually works similarly. The reason why Facebook is earning billions of dollars in revenues every year is because a user right now cannot prove on Facebook that they are whatever female and pregnant, which happens to be the most valuable advertising category. They can't prove it. Actually, Facebook is almost like your data steward that is guaranteeing to advertisers that they've infiltrated your communication so deeply that they can guarantee with 99% correctness that you're actually having these properties. And so once users are able to prove that stuff about themselves, who needs Facebook as an intermediary to be introduced to advertisements or deals that are relevant to them, right? You don't need the intermediary anymore, and I think users could end up earning money for their attention. So if something like this becomes possible, I would consider it maybe interesting for our platform, but what we wouldn't want to reproduce is sort of the Web 2 attention model. I don't think it's a good idea.
And doesn't DM3 rely on ENS addresses for chatting? So do you require users to have an ENS address to like use that feature? Okay.
So what are you using then? Just whenever they sign up with their wallet, or?
It's a good question. So the way we started is that we assume a user doesn't necessarily have a wallet when they come to CommonGround or even know what it is, right? That's how we get 1 billion more users, I guess. So what we did is we create a burner wallet for users in their browser, equip them with this and say, okay, that's your minimal identity. You could be a bot, you could be a scammer, but at least you have a wallet with which you can sign and encrypt messages on this platform. That's your account. And then communities actually say, hey, we have an area here where we want to have a guarantee that this is an actual person. And so what you need is this wallet we equipped you with plus a DID that proves you're a real person. So it becomes really, we sort of deconstruct identity, where the minimal identity is something that even robots can acquire. And then communities can decide the sort of trust threshold that they want to have in the area. So that's our approach right now. What we realized, to get a bit more technical, is that it's a very stupid idea to create a wallet in a user's browser and store the private key in local storage, right? Because it's super exposed to hackers. And so we're now migrating to a model of device-specific keys, where actually the private key cannot be derived by us, even if we would execute malicious code, basically. So right now, we basically have our own proprietary stack that we built from scratch. And we see a lot of value in becoming compatible with other networks like, let's say, Mastodon or Matrix. So that is something we would be looking at over time. But at the very moment, it's basically our own proprietary chat protocol. I wouldn't call it a protocol. It's an app, basically. So in the MVP, that's how it stays. But then I think next year we will see. It really depends on our funding situation if we can afford engineers to do this right now. It's a very good question. So right now, the back end of CommonGround is a very classical web application. So the data is stored on our service, like it would be on Discord or Slack. There's no substantial difference, with the only difference being that the organization, so us who are running the service, we have built ourselves such that we don't have a data business or even a profit motive in the company such that we would like to extract your data. But it's the same organizational model of how we process and store your data like a Web 2 application right now. The Web 3 aspect of this application is in the way it does identity and the way it does wallets and sort of gives you native integrations into the blockchain world. But it does it from the convenience of a classical web application. And we think that over time, as decentralized technologies like Ceramic and others mature, we can actually decentralize away the backend. However, I also want to say that I could see different versions of the future where maybe data governance could play out differently, right? So I'm wondering, could there be a future where DAOs build data centers, right? Could that be a future? And then actually you have, for some applications, you have a centralized data center, but it's owned by a decentralized organization, and it has a mix of tech and legal accountability infrastructure to make sure that this data isn't abused. To me, that's a viable version of a future that I could see myself living in, right? So I think maybe it's really going to be application specific, where you go fully centralized and where you have this new mix. That'll be my answer. With better software, basically. So features really built for communities in Web3. And I think right now Discord is not really serving this market well. It's just barely good enough, and there's no alternative really. And we hope that by offering an alternative, we can convince users. Of course, we will use our own token that we want to end up giving to users in a vast majority. We will use it sort of to bribe users as well, right? That's a superpower that Web3 companies have. We will use this. And yeah, I think that if we can survive long enough, what will really matter is who actually gives the ownership over their data to the users and who's just pretending to, right? And we're actually going to do it, and so I think we will end up winning against Discord. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Florian. I'll take a look at the GIP again.